That's what they call it. You make more money in littler towns. LA is a big city. They have a lot of gang members, so if all of them selling drugs or doing whatever, they ain't that much money. But if they come to a town like Denver where they ain't hip, then they can make all the money they can.
Telling us right here on this television program here that you have willed yourself out of gang activity. How did you do it? Because I want you to be able to coach and inspire our youth. Mike, how did you do that?
Well, I got a 5-year sentence and I was locked up for 24 hours a day at a facility called CSP. It's a 24-hour lockdown. As I was in there, my mom had cancer, so she was already dying on me. I'm like, I don't want to keep. I already went to juvenile and into adult facilities for gang. So I already seen if I kept going, what was going to happen. Some more jail or death. So I changed my thinking and came out here, got me a job, taking care of my kids. I see some of my old homies, you know what I'm saying? A lot of us get along and some of us don't, because some of them don't want to change. You know what I'm saying? And some of them want to still be in the streets, but I consider weak. I consider that's weak. You know what I'm saying? How I used to act where I thought I was tough, I was weak. You know what I'm saying? I was doing some weak things.
It's a pretty deep transformation, man. I applaud you for these efforts, Mike. So when you wheeled yourself out of the game, you're in the community now. By the way, folks, we're in Denver, Colorado. And as you can see from the film crew here, we brought it right down to the hood, in the heart of inner city Denver. Because we want to let you know that this is very, very real. Mike's not no actor. Mike, you weren't even compensated to do this show and program for us. So share with the audience here, what made you decide to give us this interview to the Youth of Honor Foundation?
I'm going to die one day, and I'm not trying, but I'm leaving a legacy, and I'm going to eradicate gang activity, eradicate it. That's something that I know I can do. I got about 100 other homies, you know what I'm saying, that used to gang bang, they working hard, they good citizens, and it's a movement, you know what I'm saying, everybody's tired. You got parents tired, you got grandmas tired, you got uncles, cousins, everybody tired of gang. I want to see our kids productive, playing football, basketball, represent their neighborhood in a productive way. I'm with that.
Very profound, Mike. We put some of the responsibility on the community when we speak to it in these terms. Here's an example. Michael Asberry was in the gang activity. He wheeled himself out of gang activity. Now he's back in the Denver community, and he's wanting the job. He's working the job. How has the community embraced you, Mike?
They love me. They love the change. They love my So now I got this energy where I'm showing them, look, man, this is who I am now. I'm a man, and I'm a man of God. So I'm always being watched by God and by the feds, but I'm not worried about that.
Yeah, but that's okay, and I appreciate you keeping it.
On a smaller spectrum, Denver is a lot like Los Angeles. And I've been coming to LA for almost 20 years, off and on. And even with the mountain landscape, it kind of looks similar except for the palm trees in Colorado. But the gang structure.
Definitely a West Coast city.
It's definitely a West Coast style city. And when we lost that type of leadership, you seen it in Denver because, you got the same type of black pride, of the same type of anger, trauma, drama. We listen to the same music, Chuck Taylor's khaki pants, lowriders, tattoos. So, it's very similar type of culture, but we glean our culture definitely off of Los Angeles and Denver. We're proud to say that. We're proud to say, no, we've been rocking with LA since anybody else even thought about wanting to be Bloods and Crips or just that West Coast style. People in Denver really loved it, have always been coming. So
What's up with y'all? Welcome back to the channel. We're going to get into another episode here real fast and real quick. But before we do, man, I'm still trying to reach this 1,000 follower mark right here. So, I appreciate y'all watching the content, rocking with it. But if y'all view the content, do your boy a favor. Hit that like button. Help me get out there in the algorithm right there. Give me some favor out here in these YouTube streets right here. You feel me? Once I can get some motion, man, I can really pour into this and I can really bring y'all some good content. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into this video right here. This video covers 3 people that have been kind of monumental to the, the Denver city area as far as, Bloods, Crips, and all that shit goes right there. But, You know, out of the three, I've only known one, and I happen to be locked up with him. But you know, I'll tap into that a little bit as we get into the video and all that right there. But without further ado, let's get it. Back in the day, young boys across America were obsessed with Transformers. The Transformers were a team of superhero robots that transformed into vehicles. But in Denver, older boys were about to start a transformation of their own. Rollin 30's Crips, 16-year-old Michael Asberry called out to the group of teens gathered in a basement in a Whittier neighborhood, "Transform, roll out." The Rollin 30s took their name from the corner of 30th Avenue and Gilpin Street in Denver, Colorado, where the new gang hung out that summer of 1986. Asbury was the chief. He had spent a few summers with a favorite aunt in Watts, an area in Los Angeles where the cool older boys all wore blue. Like kids, back in Denver, they had rivalries with kids from surrounding neighborhoods. But in California, it was easier to spot kids from other neighborhoods. They all wore red. When he returned to Denver, Asbury brought an allegiance of blue with him. He also brought the gang acronym whose origins were almost forgotten, Community Resource in Progress, better known as CRIP. The Rollin 30s Crips weren't Denver's first gang. The city already had crews like the East Side Poppers, which most likely used to dance off at local neighborhoods. Still, violence would occur occasionally and break out between rival fractions. The Park Hill Boys, Brick City, the Untouchables, the Greeks, Player Fives, and their Pee-wee gangsters and girls, the Nasty Fives. And out in Montbello, there was Members Only, named for the brand of coat that its members wore, as well as the P-Players. The spray painting was on the wall by 1987. The 30s, by then also known as Treos, were heavily recruiting. Each new recruit took a beating to be down with the set, and each was expected to dish out a beating when it called on. Asbury estimates that his gang was about 80 members deep when it crashed a party hosted by the Untouchables that year. Both sets might have been representing their hoods, or the fight might just have had something to do with the female, but there's no question that the 30s outnumbered the Untouchables. During the ensuing battle, fleeing fighters stumbled over fences, into the alley, and onto the streets. Fists were flying, but so were the canes, chains, and broken bottles and bats. The Untouchables weren't untouchable after all. The set dissolved in the aftermath, and about 20 of its former members joined with the Rollin 30s. The gang had grown to about 130 members when, later that year, the Rollin 30s fought the Park Hill Boys in City Park. Cops in riot gear responded, and the newspapers reported that California gangsters were invading Colorado. "This isn't no California gang member," Asbury remembers thinking. "This is us." But the California gang members made their presence known soon enough. Rival Crip fractions started springing up, and some of them under direct supervision of original gangsters back in LA. They heard about the Denver gang's problem through their own newspapers and figured there was money to be made in Denver, Colorado. Meanwhile, different sets of Bloods emerged around town, including one comprising members of the Park Hill Boys who weren't about to forget the City Park Brawl. So many people were claiming Crips. Their chief was having trouble remembering who was really down with what set and who was false flagging. So Asbury started a set of Pee-wee 30s, a second generation gang, calling it the 3-3s, pronounced Treys, and making sure that only the most passionate gangsters grew up to be Treos. Trey is a probationary state, Asbury explains, even to this day. But with the slaying of Darren Williams on January 1st of 2008, the Treys went well beyond probation, right to the public enemy number one. Cyco, Michael Asberry's nickname, did not come from the word psycho, he says. It's a cycle of events, and the cycle was a vicious cycle of events. In 1988, Asbury was accused of attempted murder and became the first Rollin 30 looking at serious prison time. Although he was tried and found not guilty that same year, 17-year-old Rashid Riley, a Rollin 30 and a good friend of Asbury, got a death sentence when he was killed by cops in Fuller Park. The next year, some Bloods jumped Asbury's little brother. With a friend in tow, Asbury crashed a Bloods party and started throwing punches at everyone in red. Then out of the corner of his eye, he saw someone running at him heard the click-clack clinking of a trigger being pulled on a jammed gun. He ran into the alley as 3 or 4 shots were fired, one of which knocked him to the ground. In his hospital bed, Asbury dreamed of not leaving the gang life behind, but of vengeance against the Bloods. 3 days later, though, Asbury was accused of shooting at a Crip. While that case was later dismissed, he soon beefed with more Crips, a set of brothers, over a girl. As Asbury remembers, he whipped one brother, who then went and got his older brother, who had a .44. As they struggled for the gun, a bullet ripped into Asbury's armpit. The shooter fled as Asbury fell to the pavement. But once Asbury was inside the ambulance, a police officer handcuffed him to the gurney and placed him under arrest for assaulting the younger brother earlier that day. That November, Asbury was arrested in connection with a beef with another Crip. He was accused of breaking into his house with a loaded .32. On June 1st of 1990, Asbury's 20th birthday, he was sentenced to 4 years in prison for that crime. While Asbury was away, crack hit Denver streets, and some of the 30s got in the game. And by the time he was released in 1992, drug money had unreleased an arsenal of weapons in his town. But after a couple years in prison, Asbury says he was ready to start preaching peace. He moderated at a gathering of Crips and Bloods where the gang members aired out their grievances and declared a truce known as the Truce of 9 Deuce. As it is becoming known, nobody was talking about quitting the gangs, though. It was all about coexisting. By then, a lot of kids didn't know life without gangs. Kids like Frederick Abrams, for example. Abrams' father was in prison, and his brother, George McLean, was the person who really raised him. But then McLean and a cousin started hanging blue rags out of their back pockets. In the Rollin 30s, McLean went by GC. Abram was street christened by the name of F-Bone after he was jumped into the trays at the age of 14. After that initiation, Abrams endured a second beating, this one from his 16-year-old brother, who refused to recognize Abram as a tray. But when you don't see nothing else or know anything else, what else are you going to do? What else do you got? Abram asked. There was nothing else to even run to. On March 24th, 1993, gunshots were reported in the 2400 block of Emerson Street. Police arrived and spotted Abram's cousin running into a house. Out front, a dead Blood was slouched over in his car. Abram's cousin told the cops that he had called the Blood over so that he could buy some drugs. And then he said Abrams had run up to the car with a gun in each hand and blasted 4 or 5 shots, killing the Blood. A week shy of his 18th birthday, Abrams was charged with murder as an adult. He took a plea bargain and was sentenced to 8 years in the penitentiary for manslaughter. His cousin was found not guilty at trial. In prison, Abram got the word that his brother GC had been murdered by some other Crips. As the streets erupted, Asbury completed his role and started working with the Operations Reconstruction, a new program designed to steer teens away from gangs and into jobs. But in May of 1994, police pulled over a blue caddy with Asbury inside. They found crack and arrested him. A year later, officers rolled up on Asbury in a parked car. One cop recognized him from the previous encounters. After Asbury was handcuffed and put into the back seat of the patrol car, he kicked at the window and broke out all of the glass. Officer Paul Baca reported that Asbury started spitting at him so that he'd move out the way and Asbury could climb out of the broken window. Baca then maced Asbury to subdue him. Asbury denied spitting, just as he denied ever dealing dope. Baca wrote the judge requesting that Asbury be locked up and kept locked up. He was a threat to the community, Baca said, and his crimes like assault and narcotics trafficking increased when Asbury was free. Besides, Asbury had threatened the officer's family. After Asbury pleaded guilty to assaulting the officer, the crack case was dismissed. And Asbury, who insisted he quit gangbanging, was sent to live in a California mansion where former NFL great turned actor Jim Brown ran an anti-gang group. Asbury would be paid to do outreach work, steering youth away from the gangster path. 10 years after he first started claiming Crips, Asbury was known throughout Los Angeles, thanks to the newspaper article that featured his picture. Since his outreach work took him into Crips and Bloods war zones, he started carrying, and when the LAP encountered Asbury in the notorious Crip neighborhood in August of 1996, they busted him with a loaded chrome .380. The deal was off now. Asbury was sent back to Colorado to serve the rest of his sentence. In June of 1999, Frederick Abrams was 24 years old, out of prison after 6 years, driving a forklift and working as a janitor. By the following February, he completed parole and was a free man, but not free for long. In March, the cops pulled him over for driving down California Street in a 1986 Monte Carlo with no license plates on the front. They found crack in his pants. In April, he was riding shotgun in a car when Denver officers tried to pull it over. Instead, the driver of the car, Asbury's half-brother, Gentor Howard, crashed it into a house, then attempted to evade the cops on foot. As he ran one way, firing his weapon at the gang unit cop, Abrams ran the other way. Another cop saw him throw away a gun. In September of 2021, locked up in the county and facing serious time on both the crack and gun case, Abrams confronted a fellow inmate, a 39-year-old Crip, in the library and accused him of murdering his brother. The inmate threw a punch at Abram. Howard jumped in and smashed a coffee pot over the inmate's head as Abrams punched and stabbed the inmate in the head, neck, and upper torso. Abrams refused to discuss crimes leading to his convictions. Howard, who is serving a 50-year sentence for shooting at a cop, declined a request for an interview. About the same time Abrams stabbed the Crip, a 25-year-old blood went by the name ShowBiz requested a chat with him. ShowBiz's real name was Terrence Roberts. Just as Abrams had grown up looking up to the Denver's first generation of Crips, Roberts, on the other hand, had grown up looking up to the first generation of Bloods. And like Abram, he had learned enough respect from the original gangsters that he was now calling the shots for the second generation. The county jail had been the scene of several recent stabbings that had all the gangster inmates on edge. Besides Crip-on-Crip violence, the Bloods and the Crips were rioting. 3 Crips had been shanked. Abram and Roberts knew that there were enough Bloods and Crips locked up, and with more coming in all the time, that the 2 gangs could go to war in the jail and stay at war. Roberts was facing charges for an assault as well as being known as a felon in possession of a gun. In this case, a Mac 11 semi-automatic weapon that he allegedly fired at someone's vehicle. Both Roberts and Abram were looking at serious time since they had serious stripes in the hood. They were also prime targets on the inside. Outside of a couple prisons in Park Hill, Crips outnumbered Bloods in Colorado. Since the Bloods were underdogs in almost any battle, they were especially passionate about gangbanging and protecting their set. It was easier to be a Crip, Roberts thought, but he also knew that Abrams was one of the Crips who had as much passion for gangbanging as any Blood out there. Him and Abrams had crossed paths in the several juvenile detention facilities over the years, but they'd never spoken 2 words to each other before. Now Roberts asked him, "You guys ain't planning nothing on doing nothing, right?" "No," Abrams said. "Are y'all planning on doing anything?" And with that, they declared an informal jailhouse truce between the Crips and the Bloods. The next time Abrams crossed paths with Roberts, it was in Fremont Correctional Facility. There were only 10 or 15 Crips in the place, Roberts remembers, but there were about 60 of Denver's hardest Bloods. Roberts himself was no longer one of them. The life he'd been leading, the talent he thought he'd been wasting, had taken a toll on his mother and grandmother and on Roberts' perception of himself, so he had finally declared that he was done gangbanging. He laid down his flag and started encouraging others to do the same. Robert's cellmate at the time was Cedric Watkins, a Blood, a couple of years younger, who had spent time in the juvie system with Roberts. Watkins had grabbed the headlines in 1998 when he was shot in Cherry Creek after watching a movie called Dead Presidents. Like Abram and Roberts, the 23-year-old Watkins was on his second prison stint, an 8-year sentence for a home invasion type of robbery. Both inside and outside of prisons, Watkins had gained power among the Bloods. His nickname, Baby Brazy, is how Bloods pronounced Baby Crazy, swapping the C for a B, which meant that Watkins was always giving Crips a reason to fight him, or vice versa. Bloods was all that Watkins knew, so when Roberts told him that he was laying down his flags, Baby Brazy wanted no part of it and changed cells. Watkins and the rest of the Bloods took note when Abrams arrived at Fremont. He was a Crip with stripes. As word spread that the Bloods were plotting to kill Abram, the rumor reached Roberts, who knew Abram was always prepared for an attack. If he learned anything from losing Watkins as a cellmate, it was that anti-gang enlightenment could not be forced, But Roberts didn't want to see anyone else die, so he respectfully asked a few Bloods to leave Abram alone, and it worked. As his parole neared, Roberts noticed that Abrams was getting along with some of the Bloods. Even if it's for two or different things, people have respect for people with a passion, Roberts says. Even if it's a cop, there's good cops out there and there's bad. But if a gangster sees that a good cop has a lot of passion for what he does, then that gangster respects the cop, even if the cop is busting him. Robert's passion was now Christ. And when he invited the hardest Crip, Blood, and Mexican gang members to witness his baptism in prison, they packed the place. Even Watkins came and wished Roberts the best in his new life. They showed me a lot of love, Roberts remembers. After Roberts was released, Abrams and Watkins started spending more time together. They talked about the gangster path and how to get off it, and soon both followed Roberts' leads. After Robert got out of prison in 2004, he went to see Reverend Leon Kelly, who's been fighting Denver's gang problems for more than 3 decades. I have told some of these guys over and over about their choices, says Kelly, executive director to the Open Door Youth Gang Alternatives. There's a mindset that they have to adjust to. It's been hard for many of them. They're burning my bridges. A lot of these older guys still have a lot of influence over the younger ones. They may not be out there banging, putting in work, but they still have a lot of influence. Over the past 20 years, gangsters from the Norteños, Sureños, Northside Mafia, Oldies, and GKIs, not just the black gangs, have all expressed an interest in stopping gang violence. At first, they're excited to make a difference, Kelly says, but soon they're sagging their pants around their kids, setting up the negative image again. Of the dozens of would-be anti-gang leaders who come Kelly's way, most have gone back to jail or prison at least once. Talking to Kelly, Roberts could see how difficult the transition was. Some of the guys hanging around Kelly after school programs still seemed to have strong ties to the streets and were struggling to break free of their former reputation. Roberts decided to set up a program similar to Kelly's, but on a smaller scale, like ex-gang member programs in Los Angeles and Chicago. Just as those cities had been ahead of Denver on the gang frontier, Roberts says they're a bit ahead of recovery as well. The kid that older Bloods in Park Hill used to call Little Terry is now Mr. Terrence. To the children of the same neighborhood, his Prodigal Son initiative is in its second year of after-school work at an elementary school. And this article was written in 2007, and this is no longer active, the Prodigal Son, but it definitely did run for quite a while. It was helping kids with their homework, teaching them to separate the right from wrong, and keeping them off the streets. Roberts takes the 20 to 30 kids who participate on field trips to talk to judges and on recreational outings like hiking or river rafting. He also helps connect needy families in his neighborhood with people and groups that have resources, clothing, and food to share. Roberts was recently hired as an education liaison by the Denver Children's Home East Denver Collaborative, working with families whose children are truant from school to keep them from falling into more serious bad habits. Roberts knows that it's difficult to make a hard-headed teenager renounce his gang. That's why he's working with kids, so that he can keep them from ever putting a red or blue bandana in their back pocket. Frederick Abrams' nephew heard Terrence speak at his school last year and told Abrams all about it. Although he was glad Roberts had taught the boys so much, Abram regrets that he couldn't deliver that lesson himself. Abram, who comes up for parole this year, is now married. His 2 sons are both about the age that Abrams was when he got put down with the Trey set. He hopes his boys aren't following in their father's footsteps, but from behind bars, he can't be sure. He knows that it takes only one hot second on a hot summer day for a 14-year-old boy to ruin his life. I don't wish that on nobody, Abrams says. How can we do right if we've never been exposed to it, he asks. My whole thought process was just twisted. I understand the decisions I made as a kid, but now, as a man, I don't think the same way. I thought before. I know it's hard for people to look beyond my past and see that I'm not a banger. I know I've got a long road ahead of me, but I'm excited about it. If other people can live within the law, then he can too. He knows it won't be easy. The guards still call him F-Bone, and inmates could still give him trouble for dropping his flag, but he's beaten odds before. He's already outlived the average life expectancy for any gang banger. You still got grown men around here doing boyish behavior, he says, but I'm finding out who Fred is, and I'm loving Fred. Some may consider it square or whatever, but I'm being real with myself. I put myself in this and I got myself to get together. I could never go back to the person I was before. And he's not in this completely alone. He and Cedric Watkins have become support for each other, a former Crip and a former Blood dreaming of a non-gangster future. In friendship, you don't hold nothing back, Watkins says. I don't hold nothing back with Fred. As corny as it may be, I'll bring it up. Watkins doesn't have a parole hearing scheduled for the next 36 years, but he hasn't given up hope. After all, he once had a pistol pointed at a police officer, but he didn't pull the trigger, and he survived that shooting in Cherry Creek. So he hopes for a new trial, hopes for a plea, hopes for time served, hopes that someone will help him, hopes that he can follow the path set out by Roberts, the path that Abrams is trying to follow. Watkins is 28 now, Abrams 31. And this is back in 2007 as this is being written, so they're way older now. The remnants of Denver's second generation gangsters. Even as the next generation takes over, the former Crip and the former Blood talk about creating a support network for others who want to leave gangs. They heard Roberts preaching about doing right while he was still in prison, and now Roberts is free on the streets and actually doing right. And just to cut the thing kind of short right here, and I'm gonna get back into it, but Terrence Roberts, who they're talking about here, ShowBiz, he actually ended up running for Denver mayor, I believe it was back in 2003. He did lose, of course, to a degree. You know, they're never gonna give somebody with a background like this, but he had a strong chance at it. And it was, it's just the growth to see that somebody can go that far to take that initiative to put themselves there. But I'll say that for another video and get back into this right here. People are starting to see from my example that we really change, Roberts says. I am the one paving the way. If they're serious when they get out, if Fred is ready for that, if Fred is sincere, I can show them the way. Abrams and Watkins both compare from being a gang member to be addicted to drugs, but the gang connection is even stronger than just a fix. It's a whole sense of being, of trust, respect. It carries all the rites of passage into manhood. Just as alcoholics have Alcoholics Anonymous and addicts have Narcotics Anonymous, Abrams and Watkins think there should be a Gangsters Anonymous, a program for older gangsters who've wasted 2 decades of their lives gangbanging. They need to replace the emotional satisfaction of being down with the gang with something more substantial, something more worth willing to die for, as opposed to red or blue. They need the kind of supportive structure that Abrams and Watkins have created for each other. I believe we both have mutual distaste for it, and that's where the support came from, Abrams says. If a person did not want to get out of a gang, what route do they have? Obviously, there is nobody teaching them to be men. Most of the time, their fathers or their mothers aren't going to be there. Just because we have fallen in certain ways doesn't mean we're utterly cast down, he continues. You can find yourself and regain your life, no matter if you're stuck with life in prison. It's your choice. God gives us a choice. Just don't be too late before making the right choice. Michael Asberry thinks he's finally made the right choice. Through the years, Leon Kelly was one of his most vocal supporters. It was Kelly who hooked up Asbury with Jim Brown's program, where he met the likes of Tupac Shakur, Ice Cube, Ice-T, and Suge Knight, and sat at satellite conferences with Crip founder Stanley Tookie Williams, a Nobel Peace Prize winner nominee who was executed by the state of California in 2005. And Kelly was again there for Asbury when he got out of prison in 2003. He found Asbury a job at Starbucks, and when that didn't work out, he got him another gig at a stereo shop. And in his spare time, Asbury told youngsters to steer clear of the gangster path. But Asbury has had some difficult steering clear of all trouble with the law. Over the past 3 years, he'd been arrested more than a few times, most recently while already in custody at the county jail. Representing Christ, Asbury says he stopped a Crip and a Blood from getting into a fight over a television. God is watching us to see what we do with the final chapters of our life, to make sure we do good things with these kids. Gangbanging is hazardous to your health, to your mind, to your body, and to your soul. According to a sheriff's deputy, Asbury himself got violent, had to be restrained, and then spit on the officer and threatened his family. Although Asbury denies that version of the story and says he was the one assaulted, he pled guilty to third-degree assault. The deputy is no longer with the department. Asbury is scheduled to be released from jail later in 2007. His reputation as a gangster, as the founder of the Rollin 30s, the first generation gang that gave birth to the notorious Trey Treys, just won't go away. But like Roberts, Abrams, and Watkins, he's determined to transform his life again. There's no lost causes, he says. On a Saturday morning of May 19th of 2008, Aurora police were called to a disturbance at an apartment building at 15400 block of East 13th Avenue around 4 a.m. Around 5 a.m., Michael Asberry was pronounced dead at a local hospital. Police say that Asbury had a lengthy criminal record and confirmed that he was a former gang member. Despite his history, police said on Monday that they did not have enough information to label the shooting as gang-related. Gang retaliation is something that the detectives are still working on. We don't know if this was motivated by gangs or not. So as the investigation goes on, we're hoping that more will become clear to us, Detective Sean Lucy of the Rapport Police Department said. Asbury's father, Hubbard, says his son was trying to get his life together. Asbury was supposed to be starting a new job the day he was killed, his father said. Hubert Asbury says although news reports of his son's gang history circulated quickly, he didn't pay much attention to them. I have nothing but good memories about Michael. He was trying to make it and make things right, he said. R.I.P. to Michael Asberry. Sad state of affairs. Man definitely was trying to change his life and get it together. Huge impact on Denver and, ultimately the hoods that are related to him. But, I never met Michael Asberry. I know a lot of cats that's from 30s and Treys and all that good stuff, right? But, I was locked up with F-Bone when we was in Buena Vista. And a quick story about F-Bone, he was cool as ever. And the last I heard about F-Bone is that he had moved to Atlanta with his people and got a fresh start out there. And if that's true, I commend him for that because I surely, on the streets, but long story short, I don't know the information like that. But I was locked up in Buena Vista with him. And this was like 2004, I feel like. 2004, 2005, I lived above him and he lived below me. And F-Bone was a cool ass cat. Like F-Bone's one of them cats, like you could just see it in his eyes, like he's a real cat, you feel me? And, we, like I said, I lived above him, he lived below me. And one morning, I feel like it was like on a weekend, like a Saturday or a Sunday. And I slept in a little bit because usually Monday through Friday, I feel like I had work call, but I got woke up early in the morning and motherfuckers was below me was yelling and screaming and was pounding like boom, 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 boom. It's like, you know what I mean? And I heard somebody screaming and, I wake up, I'm rubbing my eyes and the way that I was, the unit I was in, they had them open bars so I could look out the bars and see through the bars. It wasn't like closed, it was literally like old bars, you know what I mean? Like you think in a county jail or something, right? And I could look out and in front of the unit, in front of the cells on the first tier, they had a bunch of tables where people played poker and it's like 5 or 6 of them, but they had the little seats around them and they, little table and little chairs that were grounded to the ground. And man, there was a white dude and he was laid over the table. He was done, like he was maxed out to a T. And the guard was yelling, lock down, lock down, lock down. And I seen F-Bone and I seen him walk out and they was yelling at him. They was telling him to put his hands up or they was gonna mace him, but they was a long ways away from him. And he just walked over to the end of the unit and there was some stairs that went up to the second tier where I was on. And he just sat on the stairs and just sat there and just chilled till they came down there, put him in cuffs and everything. And then I feel like they moved him out the facility after that, but man, he maxed the shit out that white boy. And it was one of them like Aryan Nazi white boys. And I don't know what started it off, but maybe it was like, I think they were arguing in the morning or some shit. But man, hey, the white dude must have really thought he had something coming going up in that cell was like a death wish because F-Bone is a big dude, you feel me? Like F-Bone's a nice sized cat, you know what I mean? Like the dude that he maxed out, he was a bit littler than him, but like he surely never stood a chance. But yeah, dude got maxed out. F-Bone's a real cat. These cats is real reputables. These are real thoroughbreds. And Terrence Roberts, like I said, he tried to run for mayor in Denver. And he has a whole program going. Y'all can search him on YouTube. He's got an active profile with all kinds of content and stuff like that. He was on Vlad TV, and he still puts in the work. He still does that. R.I.P. to Michael Asberry. But if y'all made it this far in the video, man, show your boys some love. Smash that like button. Put me in that algorithm real quick. You know, I appreciate it. If y'all like this content, you know, hit me with the subscribe. I'm going to keep them coming. If y'all got some ideas or anything y'all want to see, drop them in the comments. But once again, I appreciate y'all, and I'm out of here.